Thank you all for joining us tonight. We are all here tonight because we recognize that immigration is one of the defining civil rights and human rights issues of our time, indeed of any time. We have seen over the last years how broken our immigration system is, and we are recognizing that these issues go far deeper than just who is in the White House right now. Tonight, we will be talking about the Neighbors Not Enemies Act, the Liberian Refugee Immigration Fairness Act, and about recent changes to TPS, DACA, asylum, and ongoing human rights abuses in ICE detention. I am so excited to welcome Hawaii Senator Hirono to join me. Senator Hirono was elected to the Senate in 2012 and sworn in as Hawaii's first female senator and the country's first Asian American woman senator. Throughout her time in the Senate, Hirono has fought on behalf of Hawaii families and communities whose voices are not often heard in Congress. Hirono served in the Hawaii House of Representatives from 1981 to 1994 and earned a reputation as an advocate for consumers and workers. After being elected as Hawaii's lieutenant governor in 1994, Hirono led efforts to support Hawaii's tourism industry through visa reform. Voters in Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District elected Hirono to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives in 2006. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you very much, and I hope you call me Mazie if I can call you Ilhan. Is that all right?
That's a deal.
Will that offend your constituents? I hope not.
I hope not. I mean, we can talk as friends and have this conversation as fellow congressional friends.
Yes, and also fellow immigrants.
Right.
Because actually, you know what? When you were going over my background, a little bit of it, and I realized that I first ran for office before you were even born. So I have been at this
just a year,
for a long time.
I know that I introduced the Neighbors Not Enemies Act in January. Yes. And I was so excited that you introduced the companion bill earlier this month in the Senate. And I know that this bill is very important because it fully repeals the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Yeah. We know that the law allows the U.S. president to determine how and if all foreign nations from a specific country should be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed, and was used during the World War II to detain and deport German, Japanese, and Italian immigrants. And I know that there was a particular story of why you wanted to carry this bill in the Senate.
Well, you know what? We have the most anti-immigrant president ever. And so one of the first things he did was to impose what we call a Muslim ban. And although he tried to fix it and tinker with it, Hawaii was the first state. Our attorney general was the first person to challenge the Muslim ban. And when you have a Supreme Court that sustained that act by the president, then nobody is safe, especially from a president like Donald Trump, who does not comport with the rule of law. And so it's past time for us to repeal the Alien Enemies Act, which is really the kind of act that embodies, in my view, racism, targeting the other, and not providing due process, which is what happened, not just to those who were born overseas, but to the Japanese Americans, as you know, in World War II. 120,000 of them were interned, and their lives were just totally, in many cases, ruined. Their lands were taken away, all of that, and their education was disrupted. So we should not have any kind of a law that allows the president, even during wartime, to be able to deport whole groups of people based on country of origin without due process. So I'm glad that we are working on this, but it's one of many immigration reform bills that I know you've introduced and I've introduced over the years.
I mean, and I think, to your point on why the governor of Hawaii moved on this speaks to that experience of what happened to Japanese Americans, and how this law was used as a justification for the Muslim ban. And how important it is for us to repeal it, because it is not just about Trump. It's about creating protections, right? For when we do get a president who disregards human rights, disregards, our values and principles as a nation of immigrants.
Yes. And this is a president that really considers immigrants to be the other. I use that framing because basically anybody that he considers not in agreement with them, and generally those are people of color, minorities, women. We're all people that he can just malign, call names. I mean, both you and I have been called names by the president. He hasn't gotten around to telling me to go back where I came from.
Yeah.
He probably doesn't even know where I came from. So this kind of targeting that enables a president who does not believe in the rule of law like this president, where we need to make sure that we do not have any laws that allow a president like this to have his or her way. So it's past time for us to eliminate the Alien Enemies Act.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I was thinking about my father, as someone who really thought about the American promise when he was bringing us to the United States as refugees. And I thought about, the kind of progress our nation has made, and whether he would have believed if someone told him that when we were coming to the United States, that, there would be a president unhinged enough to use his daughter's name as part of his political rallies to, to drive his base to come out and vote for him.
Yes.
And whether he would have even believed that it was that it was possible that someone like the president we have right now could someday be elected by Americans, because we have made such a progress as a nation. And, you're reminded when you see laws like this in the books, that even after we make progress, if we don't take laws like this off the books, that they can be manipulated and exploited by presidents who can be dangerous to folks in our country.
That's right. And you have a Supreme Court that, with the addition of Amy Barrett, has gone much farther to the right. And when you talk about voting rights, and millions of people are voting already, there are so many cases of the Republican Party and Trump and his people trying to limit who can vote, the time frame in which they can vote, when votes are going to be counted. There's some 70 cases going on right now where the Trump administration is trying to prevent people from voting, when that is a fundamental right. And you have an administration that will attack even that kind of fundamental right. And you have a Supreme Court that is potentially poised to let him get away with it, which is a very concerning thing, to say the least.
Right. So I do want us to talk a little bit about the process that you've just gone through with the nomination and the hearings and the eventual vote that just took place. I kind of want, to have our constituents be brought into your thinking process as you were preparing to confront what some of your colleagues have called it an illegitimate process?
I've called it a hypocritical, illegitimate process because in 2016, when President Obama nominated Merrick Garland to fill the position of Justice Scalia, that's when McConnell comes forward with what he calls the McConnell rule. And he had already set the stage to make sure that all his Republican senators were totally in line with him. And he had told them ahead of time, this is what we're going to do. And the McConnell rule says that during the year of an election, the people should decide who the next president should be, and therefore who should pick the next nominee. All of that was totally out the window. And it's just awesome to think that words like hypocrisy, being hypocrites, it doesn't, it falls on deaf ears. Right. And in fact, he calls us hypocrites, which is kind of amazing because Mitch McConnell has a way of turning the very thing that he's doing against those people who aren't doing it. So
he is masterful in the way that he carries out his cruelty.
And what a tremendous, it's more than a disservice. It's Ruth Bader Ginsburg's last wish, well, her most fervent wish, was that her replacement would be someone who the people, the next president, would choose after the election. And within 3 days, President Trump had already nominated Amy Coney Barrett because mainly for a number of reasons, but the first one being that he wanted someone who would overturn the Affordable Care Act, which millions and millions of people in our country rely upon for their health care, and worse, in the middle of a pandemic. And then he wanted someone who would overturn Roe v. Wade, and she has definitely indicated her opposition to the Affordable Care Act when she criticized Chief Justice Roberts for his decision in 2012 to uphold the act. So I've concluded that were she on the Supreme Court then, she would have joined her mentor, Antonin Scalia, to basically get rid of the Affordable Care Act. So she's made her position clear, even if while she was testifying, she said, oh, I can't talk about that, all of that. But we got very little from her regarding her position on just about anything. She couldn't even commit to the fact that a president should commit to an orderly transition of power. She couldn't commit to that. She wouldn't respond when we said there's voter suppression and voter intimidation and all of that going on. She said, well, I can't respond to that either. So, what we were left with were her writings, her past positions on issues that are going to affect all of us. And so this was a rush process so that she could be sitting there to hear the Affordable Care Act case on November 10th. And this is the first time in 150 years that someone gets put onto the Supreme Court without a single bipartisan vote. There was not a single Democrat who voted for her. Yeah. So for any number of reasons, this is this was we call it an illegitimate process, but fell on deaf ears.
Yeah. I mean, so of our three branches, the judiciary or the Supreme Court has one of the lowest approval ratings with the United States electorate. And I think it's like a 10% approval rating. And I wonder what this process does to a system that we need to function and to have legitimacy, that is now going to have someone be part of it who's not seen as a legitimate appointee. Certainly with the way that the process went, with the vote being so partisan, what does it mean for the future history of the court?
The clear and present danger of Amy Barrett being on the court, of course, is to the Affordable Care Act. But there are many precedents that she's already indicated that, in her view, as a Supreme Court justice, responsibility is to assess what her view of the Constitution is, and then if there's a precedent that is contrary, clearly contrary in her view to her own assessment of what the Constitution requires, then there goes the precedent. So Obergefell, for example, the right of same-sex couples to marry, that is subject to being overturned. Clearly Roe v. Wade, a woman's right to choose. You have voting rights cases. In fact, just recently, the Supreme Court tied 4-4 to a Pennsylvania case that would enable the state of Pennsylvania to count votes beyond for 3 days after the election, because with the mail being what it is, there can be delays, and even those people who have postmarked their ballots before election. And then you have the Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh writing another opinion similar, a Wisconsin case, letting the Wisconsin not count the ballots. So these issues, the voter suppression that we know is going on, especially in minority communities where you have people having to stand in line for hours and hours on end. My God, your friend EOS, she said she stood in line for 2 hours to vote in New York. So all of this is going on, and I do think that court reform is something that I've been thinking about for a number of years, and I know you have some thoughts about what we ought to do to balance the court, because it is highly skewed now to the right, which means that the protections and the battles that we thought we had won for individual protections, workers' rights, those can all fall by the wayside. So I have been thinking about court reform for a number of years. But that only happens if the Democrats take back the Senate, and if we have a president who is open to the kind of balance that we need in the highest court in the land, not to mention throughout the judiciary.
Yeah. I mean, and I know that we are having a town hall on immigration, and so I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there are a lot of immigrants in our country who are worried about what this imbalance in the court means for them. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, one of the issues that really impacts the immigrant community is the public charge rule. And there was a case in Judge Barrett's circuit where she wrote a dissent saying that because her circuit had found the public charge rule to be confusing and all of that, so they said, no, we shouldn't have it implemented. But she wrote a dissent saying it should be implemented. The fact that the immigrant communities are afraid of the public charge rule, even if it would not apply to them, she recognized that there was fear throughout the immigrant community on the application of the public charge rule, to the point where many of them were not even accessing resources and government programs that including things like food stamps and those programs that they were entitled to, because they were afraid that they would be deported or something bad would happen to their family. So she recognized this, and yet she said she thought that the administration had followed the proper procedures to institute the public charge rule, and she wrote I think a 40-page opinion, a dissent. I think I'm one of the few people who actually read it. And so it just goes to show that she does not.
She had strong opinions to write 40 pages.
Yeah, of dissent, supporting the public charge rule. She went into a whole history, but what she didn't adequately consider was the real life impact of the decisions that the Supreme Court would be making. And that's something that Ruth Bader Ginsburg said. The court should pay attention to the impact. For example, if you get rid of the Affordable Care Act, minority communities, Blacks, immigrant communities will be particularly hard hit by the fact that they will no longer have access to health care. And so when we asked her, well, what about the 100 million people plus who have pre-existing conditions? She says that's a policy issue that Congress should address, which means that she's not paying adequate attention to the real life impact of the decisions that the Supreme Court will make. That is not where we need the court to be. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said many of her dissents had to do with the court, other members of the court not paying attention to the real world impact of what they were saying or what they were deciding. So yes, this court is going to have an impact on all of our lives. But I would say the particularly hard hit will be immigrants. Who can be deported, who can come into our country, all of these, who can vote. These are all issues that will come before this court, I believe, eventually.
And in a minute, I will have a panel to sort of talk about some of the challenges that the immigrant community is faced with. But I know that in June of this year, the Supreme Court rejected Trump's attempt to end DACA.
Mm-hmm.
And that's got to be one of the things that's also on the table now.
Yeah. Yes. And in fact, the court didn't even say that they left open the opportunity for Trump to reinstitute the elimination of DACA. So you have a very conservative court. They call themselves, the majority now call themselves originalists. They have to figure out what the founding fathers, no women, what they thought the Constitution should protect. And so she's an originalist. And then she has a very outlier view of the role of precedent. And as a justice, if she deems that her reading of the Constitution doesn't comply or does not agree with precedent, then no precedent is safe. So there are just so many issues, not to mention, we have a very divided country, and we cannot continue in this way. And your father, you said he would be appalled to see what's happening in our country and the divisiveness that this administration continues to perpetuate. And we need a leader who will bring us together, who will take care of the pandemic, who will get the pandemic under control so that we can address not just the healthcare crisis, but also the economic crisis that so many of our communities face, as well as the systemic racism in our country and global climate change that, this administration and this president goes the opposite direction of what we need to be facing and dealing with.
I talk a lot about how we need an immigration system that is humane and just.
Yeah.
I know that you, right.
Yes.
I know that you've been at this a lot longer than I have in trying to dream up what a humane and just immigration system should look like. And so I want you to share that dream with us. What happens after the election if things go in a positive direction? What can people look forward to?
If it's President Biden and Vice President Harris, we're going to have a humane immigration policy that I hope will put family unity as a guiding principle, because as an immigrant myself, I know how important having our family here with us to enable us to succeed in a whole new country where we don't even speak the language or know the customs. So family unity as a guiding principle. And obviously there needs to be a path to citizenship for the 11 million plus undocumented people in our country. We need to protect DACA. We need to provide language access for immigrant communities and families, and with healthcare as a right, not a privilege. That's all tied together, in my view, the kind of humane immigration policies. Immigrants need access to healthcare. Immigrants should have a path to citizenship. Immigrants should have be able to call our families to be with us, to enable us to truly be happy and succeed in a new country. And we should welcome immigrants. We should provide asylum, that is provided under international and our own laws. And so we have a broken system, and it's very inhumane. And of course, one of the first things I hope Joe Biden would do is to find the parents of the 545 children whose parents can't be found. In my own family, when my mother brought the two older kids, me and my older brother, she had to leave my younger brother, who was only 3, because there would be nobody in this country to take care of him while she went to work to support us. And that separation caused trauma to my little brother that he struggled with all of his life. And so I know what family separation does, what it can do. And you can imagine these children that were ripped from their parents' arms, the trauma that they're undergoing. And now 545 of them, we can't even find their parents. See, this is just unconscionable.
Yeah. And, I mean, he also, in a very sad way, sort of laughs at the values and the principles that we carry as a nation.
Yes.
when he talks about proudly how he zeroed out the refugee program.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who came here because of the refugee resettlement program, I know how that is a painful thing to watch as a nation, and how that translates something we are not to the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, getting an opportunity really to have an immigration policy that is a really good translation of what our principles and values are as a nation, in itself is a starting point that we could all be proud of.
Yes.
Because there's just been so much damage done. If it's not for the metering program, it's the family separation program, it's canceling out the refugees, it's ending the family reunification.
Yes.
I mean, it is the gamut, right? It's, having ICE officials terrorize communities. It is really a complete contrast to every which way we see ourselves as a nation.
And I think that President Trump really revealed the major fault lines in our country. We've never dealt with the issue of racism in our country, the misogyny, and all of those issues he's brought to the fore, because clearly they were always present in our country, but he has given voice to all of these resentments and anger. And so we are going to need to figure out over time how to bring our country together. And I'm not being Pollyanna about it, because you can't have 40% or so of the country being so angry that they would continue to vote for somebody like Trump, who will do absolutely nothing to improve their lives.
Okay.
But he speaks to their anger, resentments, and fear of people like you and me.
Yeah, it's how do we go about really changing the societal outlook.
Yes.
And how do we create an environment where people recognize that our destinies are tied together? That when you are struggling, your neighbor, regardless of what their race, religion is might also be struggling. And uplifting one another uplifts all of our communities. It uplifts us as a nation.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And I think that those of us who are immigrants who came to this country hoping for a better life, to have the opportunity to be able to do that, and to see how hard it is now to get an education, for example, to afford education. Education is a great equalizer. And when it's out of the reach of so many people, then we need to address that. We need to change that. And I would expect the next president to have people who actually are in positions that promote what the agency is supposed to be doing. You're supposed to have an environmental protection agency that protects the environment, not help us pollute the
Cut regulations.
You need an education secretary who actually cares about public schools.
Yeah.
And so it runs the gamut. And I've never seen anything this bad. and one person can really, turn the tide for an entire nation. Where I have friends who live in other countries, and they look at us and they're sorry for us.
Yeah. I mean, I think for a long time we've talked about how it is not one person that has the ability to destroy everything we hold dear. But we have seen that with this president, that it is possible that one person can, one person with power can do it. Yeah.
When he has people who don't question, you have an entire Republican establishment. I don't know what happened to their values, nowhere to be found by and large. And then you have an attorney general who is views himself as his personal lawyer. And so it's just all across the board. I call it the moral dead zone that surrounds the president, and anyone who comes near him, do not expect to change him. He will change you, and suddenly you're kowtowing to him and his values. So we have a chance to change the trajectory of our country in only a few days. And I think the fact that millions of people are standing in line, it gives me a lot of hope, Ilhan, that can happen.
Well, I am excited. I always say you get what you organize for, and I know a lot of people are out there organizing, including yourself, for a Senate where you have colleagues that don't have that moral decay, and presidency where that moral decay isn't present.
Yes.
And so I look forward to what kind of world we might end up with on November 4th. I thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about something that we are both passionate about, governing and immigration.
Yes. Thank you, Ilhan. Take care. And to all your constituents, they're very lucky to have you be a fighter for them.
Same to yours.
Take care.
Well, they say immigrants get the job done, and so I am really excited for the ability to have a panel discussion with our next three panelists who have been in the forefront of fighting for an immigration system that is humane and just. First, we are going to have Linda Clark. She's one of my constituents, a longtime advocate for a permanent fix for recipients of DED and TPS holders from Liberia. Linda traveled to Washington and joined the 2019 State of the Union address as my guest to advocate for a permanent extension to DED. So I'm so thrilled that she is here and has helped us reach that momentous goal. Next, we have Abina Abraham, who is an immigrant organizer with the Black Immigrant Collective. She's also an organizer with the St. Paul Federation of Educators. And we have Michelle McKenzie, who is the Deputy Director of the Advocates for Human Rights. The Advocates fight for immigration reform and provide direct assistance for immigrant issues, human trafficking, and much more. Thank you all for joining us tonight. To begin, I would love to give Linda the floor to share what the change to the law in DED has meant.
Thank you so much for this forum, and thanks to the senator for that insight. That was important to give us more insight on the racism and everything that's going on in this country right now. Thank you to all of you on this platform for helping steer this ship in the way that is going for immigrants, especially the Liberians who are on this program right now. I'm so grateful that this has been a success so far. We have a lot of obstacles though, and those obstacles are like when we started the process, we thought that it was just going to be a smooth, transition because of the different requirements that we thought that we needed, which was if you had been here a certain time. As soon as you show those particular documents showing that you've been here, those times that the time frame that we had before us, things were just going to go smoothly. But now it's like a lot of hitches on the road. For example, me, I've been here since 2000, and I have every work authorization since 2000. I have every information that I needed, that when I sent to immigration, I expected to, just get the approval right away. Because we know, immigrants, all of us know that it's like you are afraid to break any law because you in a country, a strange country. So I would not be brave to leave from America knowing that I don't have status to come back in the United States. What am I saying? I'm saying that I've never been out of the country because that's one of the requirements if you have stayed here all along. And I've been here all along, and sending those documents in, I expected to, just get my return and get what was required, of what they required of me and what I expected of them. But not knowing I had to go back and forth like 2 times. They send my papers back the first time, they send it back the second time, and then the third time before they accepted what I sent them. And I had to send more documents and more documents, knowing that it was just going to be a smooth ride. Now we are still waiting. And then we have interviews. I see a couple of people, calling and emailing me, telling me that, oh, I got my letter for my interview. And I think a couple of people have their green card already. But what am I saying? I was expecting us to, the pathway to be smooth, more smooth than what it is right now. So it's like kind of frustrating because a lot of people still getting letters saying that they have to send this and they have to send that, and we want to know if you are in the country, and all of that. But come what may, we know that we're going to get through this, but just that the transition is kind of, it is confusing and frustrating. A lot of people are frustrated because of all this that is going on. And then I know because of the virus, things have stalled. But since it came back, we expected things to just speed up, but now it's still stalling in a way that we don't really comprehend. So, I think Abina can say more to that because we've been complaining and we have a chat where we just, vent what's going on and say what's going on with immigration. But, we know that pathway will come, but then the transition in getting there, that's the problem we've been having. And it's very frustrating for us.
Thank you so much, Linda. Next, we'll have Michelle share a bit about how the law works, who qualifies, what steps do you need to follow, and what the deadline is and how much it would cost.
Right. Well, thank you, Congresswoman. And Linda, your frustration is being felt throughout the immigration system right now. And unfortunately, what she speaks to is real. But it is important to know that if we don't file the applications under this Liberian Immigration Fairness Act, we will be out of time. The window for applications closes on December 19th. So applications need to be at immigration, received, properly filled out, and accepted by that time. So we just have, less than a couple of months now to get that all done. And so people, despite the frustrations they're hearing about, now is the time really to take action and get that in, or the chance is missed. It may be a fight ahead, but Liberians have not been they've been patient, right? You fought for many years, you can keep going, right? The LRIFA, the Liberian Refugee Immigrant Fairness Act, really brings just, the chance to get permanent residence, to get that green card for people who've lived here for a long period of time. But it doesn't have to be Linda's period of time. We don't have to go back to 2000. You have to have been in the US since November of 2014 and be able to demonstrate you've been continuously present in the United States since November of 2014. That means you have to provide, like you were talking about, documents. of what of being here, maybe school enrollment, paychecks, proof that you've been physically in the United States continuously. So something showing you've been here every month, really, since that time. But we don't have to go all the way back. I know some of y'all, arrived in 1983. It's okay. Just start at 2014. So that's good. You have to be a national of Liberia. So that requires getting that Liberian passport or a naturalization certificate or other good proof that you're a national of Liberia. There's been really good advocacy by Abina and Black Immigrant Collective and others to try to make sure that the Liberian government is being able to be as responsive as possible to getting passports for people. So that's something that we need, that proof of Liberian nationality. And you need to be admissible to the United States. And this is where lawyers really come into it. There is... the immigration law was set up not to bring families together and bring people into the United States. It was set up to exclude and deport and to try to really meter who could be in this country through lots of technical exclusion laws. And there are too many to really even describe, and I certainly don't want to give anyone advice here, but that's why we've got some immigration lawyers available for you to just pick up the phone. I think there's a number that's being broadcast, and you can have an intake so that you can find out whether you're admissible or not. Things that are a real problem, that are clearly going to be a problem under the Liberian Act, are going to be convictions for serious crimes that are called aggravated felonies in the immigration law, convictions for 2 or more crimes involving moral turpitude. And that's an old phrase from the 1800s. But it's still in our immigration law, and people who persecuted other people during the conflict. So all those things are going to be problems, but there can be more traps. So pick up the phone, get a consultation as soon as you can and get it in. You have to have your papers filed by December 19th.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michelle. Lastly, I want to invite Abina to share about the organizing work that made this possible. I know you've been at this for a really long time, and what's happening right now to make this law effective, and what do we need to do to make sure everyone who's qualified is able to apply? How can we learn from the creation of this law and carry other immigration priorities?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us on, Congresswoman. So this advocacy started before I was even born. There was many people that came from Liberia due to the Civil War. And Liberia is commonly known as America's stepchild. And so many of our folks were under the expectation that while our country was in turmoil, that the US would open their arms to folks to be able to live in this country. And that wasn't quite the reality for many folks. So DED had changed over time. It started being TPS. We were the first country to ever be granted TPS, and then also transitioned to being the first country to be granted DED. And since I was a little girl, my mom and I would go to churches, we'd go to community meetings where people were always organizing. I remember when I was in elementary school, we had a letter writing campaign, and I took letters to my teachers to sign saying that they wanted to keep Liberians in this country. We've had prayer sessions. We've sent holiday postcards to the White House, phone banking, taken buses to DC. There's been so many different ways in which we've advocated, but there's a couple things that I want to highlight that are unique about this campaign. Number one, it's been women-led. This campaign has been led by women through and through. The second thing is it's been 100% grassroots. This is one of the first pieces of policy that I've worked on that we haven't had to hire outside lobbyists who are paid by big corporations to lobby the government. This has been us using getting resources from community to take people to DC to share their stories with elected officials, having rallies where sometimes we didn't even have good speaker systems. This has been so grassroots. And then I think some things that we've learned has been messaging. So being that we're the first country that has experienced going through the process of losing their TPS status and then being moved to this uncertain DED status, messaging has been everything. So I think that this bill is going to be the cornerstone for any other pathway to citizenship bills that we pass. And so one of the things that we have to be really careful about when we organize is not to pit ourselves against each other. And, you know, when we, like during this fight, the Dreamer movement started, and it was all about our parents brought us here at no fault of our own, and we started to criminalize our parents, and then we started to criminalize people who were incarcerated against people that had families. And one of the things that we've learned through this campaign is we can't expect people that immigrate to this country to be perfect. Everybody makes mistakes, and the law has to be able to support people if they make mistakes, right? And so one of the things that we learned is that we can't pit ourselves against each other. And also, we got to stop asking for piecemeal approaches to things, right? So you heard Linda refer earlier to the flaws that are in the system right now to get this bill. We were so dead set on trying to get a pathway to citizenship, and some of the really, problematic language that we have around the criminal justice system and immigration continued on into this bill, and it's impacting people's ability to get their status changed. And also, we have to hold our government accountable. So, there was a couple years ago where the Liberian government was stating publicly that other nationals from West Africa were taking our passports and trying to get to other countries because we have some visa-free countries that people want to go to. And now we're feeling the effects of that because people are sending in their birth certificates and their passports and still are being asked to prove that they're Liberian nationals. And so messaging and making sure that we're really intentional about what we're saying out in public plays a huge role. And then also, the underlining tone of all of this is the racism that exists. We know that this administration has been going after Black immigrants in every single way that they can. We know that deportation numbers are high in our community for crimes that you wouldn't even think that, people should be deportable for. Michelle mentioned before aggravated felonies and all these things, but we're seeing people running stop signs are now deportable offenses. And so the biggest thing that we can take out of this is we've got to be serious about being anti-racist and be serious about making sure that our Black folks are liberated in this country, because if we're not, we're going to keep seeing stalls in laws like this. I remember last December how we all felt when this bill passed, and now that we're now in the reality of it, and we're seeing the racism peeking its head out, where they're trying to make it impossible. And the thing that's so heartbreaking about this is we know that our African communities are the backbone of helping people during this pandemic, and their stability is on the line. And so I think one of the biggest things that we learned from this from this campaign is we've got to make sure that all of our liberations are tied to each other. We can't keep accepting piecemeal approaches, and we've got to be bold and be strong and say, you know what, we're not going to take your old language that continues to hold us back. We're going to dream big.
Yeah.
That's just very profound. I think about that quite a lot. Oftentimes when we are on the floor speaking up on behalf of immigrant communities, I see my colleagues cheer at times, and I shrink in my chair, thinking, that's not the way we want you to speak about us and for us, because that language that you just used to defend and thought of as standing in solidarity will someday be used, right, to limit the opportunities that might exist, the dreams that people can hold. And I know that I've been so grateful to so many of you who have been advocating really in bringing the Black immigrant lens to the fight for a just immigration. Because oftentimes when we talk about immigration, we tend to have one lens on who is seeking asylum in this country and who are the undocumented folks, and who is a dreamer, and the ability to expand that conversation has meant so many people are finally being seen, and have the comfort, right, of knowing that their issues, their voices are also being prioritized. And so I really do appreciate the work and the intentionality that has gone into that. I just have one quick question for the three of you, and it's just about how do you really stay hopeful as immigration advocates, as folks who are trapped in our unjust immigration systems, and folks who are guiding family and community members through this broken system.
Well, I would say a lot of my peers, like when they get their letters, they call me, and I'm like, and so disappointed and discouraged, and I tell them, I say, we've come this far, so there's no turning back. You guys have to stay hopeful. And then we got another clip on our chat line, this girl and her lawyer, and she was saying you have to carry a lawyer, you have to do this when immigration call you, and then everybody got scared. So I'm like, I don't think we need to be scared. This is no time to be scared anymore. My hope is what you wrote on your documentations, all your papers, what you wrote on those papers, those are the things that you're going to be asked. They can't ask you anything that you didn't, give them. What you gave them is what they're going to ask you. So people need to calm down and just don't panic, because this is no time. We're panicking before, and we have seen this light at the tunnel. It's like we need to just pass through that now and go forward. So I just, I'm just giving hope to the hopeless, those that just feel that things will not go the way it's supposed to go. I'm just trying to, encourage people. That's all I'm doing now, to encourage people and seeing that, life has to go on and things will change. It's going to be better. It's not just going to remain like this. It's going to be better. So I'm just.
I love that. Give hope so that you can be hopeful. That's great. All right. How about you, Michelle?
Well, I think that's right. This is part of a struggle. It's part of a movement. I mean, people move, and we've had, racist exclusionary laws since our country came into existence, and we're moving forward on a new vision. What Abina's describing of making this, really something that doesn't undercut one another. And really what you and the senator were talking about, our immigration policies need to figure out what we want from them, how we can accomplish real goals that take into consideration the human rights of each and every person affected by those, and make it accomplish that rather than outdated tools of white nationalism, which is precisely what our immigration law was built to do and is continuing to do well. So we can create a new vision. We're part of a struggle together. And it's one that, what gives me hope is watching somebody like Abina, be there, moving me forward, because I learn so much all the time as we're working together. So I wanted you to have the last word on this for sure, Abina.
So before I share what gives me hope, I just want to say next time, Congresswoman, that they're, talking about what they expect from us as immigrants, please let them know that we expect our capes when we enter this country since we're superheroes.
I love that. I love that.
You know, what gives me hope is I remember being in middle school and being so afraid and going to a rally at Hennepin County Government Center and sharing with over 3,000 people that I was undocumented, and people looking at me like I thought all Black folks were refugees. And the reason that that gives me hope is because I've never seen so much solidarity amongst immigrant communities like we've seen right now. Like, we have this beautiful immigrant family fund mutual aid that we're working with the Asian community, the Latinx community, and we're talking about each other's issues. And exactly what they wanted to do to divide and conquer us is not happening. We're building together and fighting for each other. And you know, I see more of us talking about being undocumented and being immigrants and being proud on social media. And I remember when that was a taboo, like we didn't talk about that. And then what also gives me hope is that, you know, when we go from getting calls from people in detention to getting a call saying, my asylum was just approved. I just got my green card. I just, you know, became a citizen and I'm just voting. I think sometimes we underestimate social media and, you know, we are so used to seeing a lot of negative, bad things on there, but it's really become a tool that we can use to, one, educate our communities about their rights, and also get to celebrate in these moments, like when we actually make it through this really rigid system. And so just seeing more of us celebrating and working together is truly, really what's making me proud and giving me hope.
Well, here. That's where I find my source of hope. Just seeing so many people be bold in their organizing and advocacy, because as you all probably know, I refuse to allow fear to dictate anything in my life, and I know that for many of us who have escaped lots of things in order to make it to the United States, the fear of being returned to that has made our communities go underground and stay silent and remain fearful. And the fact that people are no longer willing to do that and not just want to survive, but to thrive, is what gives me hope every single day. So thank you again for joining me. It's inspiring to be building a better future with so many of my friends and neighbors. And I just want to say goodnight to all of you. We're going to end with a time for those who might be eligible for the LRIF to have a consultation with an attorney. There will be a link to that in the comment section. And I wanted to extend another thank you to all of the organizers and attorneys who are doing everything that they can to help our communities every single day. And want to send a special thank you and a shout out to Senator Hirono for joining me to speak about the changes around immigration and the things that we can be hopeful for if we organize for a better tomorrow. I know that these are challenging times, and I as an immigrant find myself connected to everyone who is in this fight. And so I hope all of you feel connected to me in this fight and know that you can count on me. And as we fight for a better future, please don't hesitate to contact my office with any questions or any ideas. And so thank you all again and have a great night.